Welcome to We for Warriors Project podcast.
Yeah, no, so right now you're in jail. Why are you in jail for 10 days? Did you not have bail? Did you not have money? I don't know how the justice system works I'll tell you, in California, now I had money last year's removed from the military. I worked almost, I had the ability to bail out. Was it just a function of not having the money to bail out? Was it a function of, what was it?
We didn't have a lawyer at that. I didn't even know that I would ever need a lawyer in my lifetime at this point. So I had no relationship with a lawyer, and they set my bail at 40,000, and even coming up with 4,000 at that point was unheard of. The Marine Corps had no interest in bailing me out. What they did was they sent my chain of command to meet me about the 5th day I was in county, and they had me sign my retirement orders, and they retired me from the Marine Corps from the other side of glass.
Get the fuck out of here. Okay. I love this. So now let's make this now really back. Whitney did not call to get you in trouble. Whitney was concerned, and the police were her only option at the time in her mind, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and in most people's minds, I mean, realistically, when you have a shitty situation, you call 911. You don't even get to pick who they send. You just call them, and they send whatever they choose. That person on the other end of the line determined that call was not they could have. What if they sent the fire department out there, and the fire department was able to de-escalate that situation without anyone ever being arrested?
Well,
why is that not an option?
It's de-escalation, and that's what we don't have in our law enforcement. And out of fairness to what you said, it's a training issue. I mean, most of these guys are ex-military. Many of them have the issues we have, and they're being asked to do a job that honestly is probably beyond their training level. And so, out of fairness to them, I think we have a systemic issue, not necessarily a police issue, but a systemic issue because we're ignoring the real needs. Now, did you just smoke some medicine right there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm stressing you out. Okay, good. What kind of strain are you taking right now?
What type of medicine am I having right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I am having some Ada from the wonderful farm of Garden of Whedon, which is veteran owned and operated.
Awesome. Shout out to I love those guys. So good. You have to share save me some.
Absolutely.
So right now, so you're in jail for 10 days. You get out. When do you realize that the state of Oklahoma, the wonderful people of Geronimo and whatever else shitty ass county you're in, are going to make this such a bigger deal than it needs to be? Because remember, police show up at your house because you had a fight with your wife, no physical interaction. They come to you, they arrest you, they find 5 vegetative pot plants in your house, no cannabis, and they do what to you? What do they do in terms of throwing the book? Talk to me how it proceeds after you get out of jail.
So, honestly, the first interaction with the judge when he told me I was facing 2 to life for cultivation.
The judge tells you you're facing life in prison for cultivation.
Absolutely. That was my arraignment when I was told the charges that were brought before me and the severity of it, and that again, so I serve the rest of the next couple of days in jail. I get released, and I get down to my house, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, and I'm going found a lost puppy up on my driveway. And I see the tag, it's like 9 houses down, and I'm feeling lazy, so I decide I'm not going to drive. So I throw this thing in the bed of my truck, I hop in my truck, I pull out of my driveway, and I get literally one house in front of my house, and I get pulled over. It's Geronimo Police Department. They're telling me that I no longer have a driver's license and that I don't have insurance on my vehicle, which wasn't true. So they arrested me and impounded my vehicle, which was the only vehicle that I had for my family at the time.
So now you're the bad boy of Geronimo, and the police are basically living off you to make it look like they're doing something.
Yes. So they arrest me for driving without a driver's license. I'm released the next day on my own recognizance, and we meet up with friends for dinner, and we're going to Fort Sill. And I realize in this transaction that I don't have my wallet on me. I've left my wallet at the house, and you can't get onto Fort Sill without a military ID.
Yeah.
So Fort Sill, from the, Key Gate or Fort Sill Gate, Fort Sill Boulevard Gate to my house is roughly 11.5 miles. So I tell my wife and my friends, you know what, go. I was frustrated with the gate guard because he wasn't allowing me to go in. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to walk. So I start walking home. I get through about 9.5 of the miles back to the house. I'm talking to Whitney. She's en route to pick me up. She's getting off the highway at the next exit. I'm walking on a side road, but there's no sidewalks out there in Oklahoma, and it's the middle of the night. And in the process of Whitney trying to pick me up, I get pulled over for walking down the road. I'm then searched by the state patrol. They find less than a gram of cannabis on me, and they take me to jail for it.
So
that's when I realized the severity of Oklahoma and what I was dealing with. When I was released from jail, I went to the judge with the attorney that I had at the time, Michael Corrales, and I begged the judge to allow me to leave the state. And he said because of it being no prior convictions, no prior issues, and then all of a sudden I've got 3 things within a month, he grants it to me. He says, yes, you know what? You did your 10 years in the Marine Corps, you got medically retired, go see your family. So I come to California to see my family. Well, in that process, I'm not working, and this looming court case is coming over. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll just try and jump in on some classes at school. I can get paid BAH that way. It's not as stressful as being in a working environment. And it doesn't look as bad if I have to walk away in the middle of it. You know, I may lose out on some classes, but it's not like quitting a job. You know what I mean? That means a lot to me as far as that whole saving face is I don't want to work for someone and then tell them 2 days later I got to quit because I got to go to court in Oklahoma.
Yeah. So you are moving to California, right? And you had to post bond. So you have a date to show back up, and you're figuring your attorney is going to take care of all that stuff, tell you where you need to be, when you need to be there, and you moved to California, correct?
Yes, and that's exactly how it worked out. In that process of dealing with the other lawyer that I had, the case was continued twice. Twice. And we were set for a court date May of 15, end of May of 15. Memorial Day that year, I had some issues come up. I was in a dark spot. I was still on pharmaceuticals at the time, and I was having issues, in my opinion, with the cannabis working properly because of interactions. And the ultimate result put me in Long Beach VA's mental health ward.
Did you get 5150?
I did twice. They don't like me.
Welcome to those people out there who don't understand 5150. It's a very common thing for veterans. What happens is you go to the VA and you say, I'm not feeling well. Something's wrong with me. And remember, you're taking 15 plus pills a day and everything. And what do they do in their infinite wisdom? They hold you against your will, and they're allowed to do this for 72 hours with a 5150. And in many cases, it turns longer to 2 weeks plus weeks. Now, were you out in 72 hours in both cases?
No, the first time it took me almost 6 days to finally get released. The second time was a 3-day in and out.
Okay. So one of these problems with the 5150 is vets don't go to the VA because it literally is you check in and you literally don't check out. And so people understand a 5150. A 5150 is a California term. Every other state has a different term. For example, Nevada, it's Nevada 2000. And what it is when you are considered by the doctor to be a danger to yourself or a danger to others, and because of the suicide rate, it's most always a danger to yourself, they are legally allowed to hold you for 72 hours. I'll give you an example. When I was arrested one night, I was brought in. They took me to the county psych ward. And the doctor looks at me and goes, are you a danger to yourself or a danger to someone else? I'm like, no, we can't hold him. You go to the VA. I went to the VA just to enroll, and they held me. The level of bar that legally is supposed to be at is not being passed at the VA. And so there's a big, what I've learned about the VA, it's about CYA, cover your ass.
Yep.
Because if you come in and they don't hold you, they're on the front page.
Yep.
If something happens. If you come in and they hold you, the institution, the system is not going to get those doctors in trouble. So listen, many of you out there are going to say better to be safe than sorry, but you know, we're supposed to live in America, and a lot of these vets are being turned away from the VA and not going to the VA because of this. And so it's just, it's not a good thing. So just my 2 cents. We can talk about that if you want to, Kris.
Well, yeah, no, and I guess my whole experience with it is, personally, I won't utilize that option from this point forward, simply because of the fact that I would not have access to cannabis.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, that's really sad, because realistically, how I'm not taking pharmaceuticals. So you put me in that environment and tell me I'm going to take pharmaceuticals, and then they're going to tell me I'm going to have to stay longer because I tell them no. So for me, realistically, dealing with the VA on that avenue is very scary at this point. Knowing that I can't utilize that as a resource if I needed to. Thankfully, with cannabis, it hasn't been an issue.
Got it. And you do live in California, where it's at least tolerated that you do it on your own without any issues, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So as I like to call it, pretty much anywhere you're finding that, I mean, not all states, but a lot of states at this point, you have access to cannabis. Doesn't mean that it's accepted, but you have access to it, and that's what you have in California. There's definitely a lot of access, not necessarily widely as accepted as a lot of other states may think. There's a lot of limitations to being a cannabis patient in California. It's not just this, I don't know, the wonderful, I don't know, medicated lifestyle some people think it is.
Got it. Listen, it makes sense. So now let's go back. You're in California. Your attorney's taking care of what they need to take care of. What happens? I mean, at some point there's a disconnect, and you tell us about an event that happened at your kid's school.
Okay, so I'm in the hospital in Long Beach, and during that process, there was a court date that was missed.
And that was what, May of 2015?
Yeah, May time frame, end of May time frame of 2015. By the middle of June, unknown to me, I had a fugitive warrant placed over me. Now this is a little bit different than a standard bench warrant, because the fugitive status, the flight risk and or the danger to others risk, is essentially why they classified me into that group. So what that gave them the ability to use was the U.S. Marshals for extraction. And in the process of using the U.S. Marshals for extraction, they could do that essentially in any way, shape, or form they wanted. And what I mean by that is they executed the warrant in plain clothes with civilian vehicles. One of the vehicles was a tow truck. I mean, that's how civilian they were when they were chasing.
It's even. Let's paint the picture. You've moved out to California. You've enrolled in school. You're a happy family. You've never had any prior issues.
Nope.
You got arrested in Oklahoma with 5 fucking immature pot plants.
Yep.
And by the way, you're a 100% disabled vet with PTSD and physical issues.
Yeah.
Okay. You then got pulled over a couple days later with less than a gram on you. Okay.
Well, walking.
Those are your crimes.
Yes.
And by the way, because at this point in time, your wife is not wanting any domestic violence charges, correct?
No, she is pushing everything she can to have them dropped, and they just keep threatening her with charging her with the cultivation charge if she does.
He's silent, and you're silent on that matter, because the last thing you want is the mother of your children to be arrested for. And your kids are living with everyone but you two.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the court agrees to let you go back out to California. You're having all the issues we all have as veterans, right? You're dealing with the pharmaceutical approach, which I think exacerbates in many causes, creates a lot of these problems.
Absolutely.
And you're being arrested, you're being put in the hospital against your will, 785150 at the VA. So how did you miss your court date?
In that process, the attorney that I had, essentially, I mean, do I want to say that it was a willful disregard? No. Was I hospitalized when it happened? Yes.
So you're in the hospital and you can't make it, and he doesn't tell the court?
No, because at this point in time, he has asked for a large amount of money to take the case to trial. Otherwise, he's going to plead me out to essentially a 5-year bit. At that point in time, and we decide to part ways.
Okay.
So at this point, I've got no lawyer
Yeah. So wait, your lawyer asked for a large amount of money. Everyone in America has been in that situation. You don't have that money. So he drops he just doesn't do his job. You're now in the VA 5150. You can't leave. You miss the court case. You get out. What happens? And tell me how it happened. So you're with your kids, right?
Yes.
Okay, just wait. These are U.S. Marshals. They absolutely been following you. They absolutely been doing recon on you. And they decide to take you down on these horrible, wicked charges in Oklahoma. When?
So it's midday. Now that morning I got on a bicycle and rode 3 miles to Saddleback College and went to school at 7 o'clock that morning. They had me at the school at Saddleback where the parking lot was empty as I was loading up the bicycle, and decided not to take me there. We then stopped for food at a Del Taco en route to my son's school. They decided not to take us there.
Okay, you say who? Is Whitney with you?
Whitney's with me. Whitney's driving the van. I'm in the passenger seat. I've got Jackson and Levi in the back 2 seats of the van.
And you're heading towards where?
Towards Levi's pre-K elementary school.
Your third child's elementary school. Okay. So you pull into your third child's elementary school, correct?
Absolutely.
With all the other elementary school kids there, with all the other elementary school parents there, and what happens?
So as I exit out of the passenger side vehicle of the van, I look back, and in doing so, the driver of the large tow truck style vehicle, he was this shaved head white male, I saw a pistol in his right hand. As soon as I saw it, I knew they were there for me. Now, I'll say I was shocked. I thought I wasn't going to have any more than a bench warrant. But once the 7 officers surrounded me in the parking lot with my wife bawling and my son Levi to this day trying to figure out why men with guns took me away. He doesn't recognize that they were police officers and still never has.
And he'll hate police the rest of his life.
No, honestly, because he doesn't even know they were cops. He looks at cops like we'll watch a TV program. He sees a cop and he still idolizes it. He literally thinks that these guys were just, militiamen with guns sort of a thing, like just taking his dad. There was no badges. There was no cop cars. So for him, it was just armed gunmen. It was literally
at a pre-K elementary school with parents. They've had they could have taken you down at any point in time.
They had me at any point in time for the last half hour, openly admitted that to me afterwards, and then told me the reason why they came at me the way they did, and so that I would not know, was because of the fact that I was a veteran with combat experience. That was their reasoning. That was their definition of okay. So now what I thought was a badge of honor, now if ever dealing with law enforcement, is literally a qualifying factor that you're going to see a lot more of a hostile and or dangerous approach.
Absolutely. It kind of makes you realize what I hate to say, what many African Americans go through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The way they approached me, the manner in which they came at me was I was a hardened, hard, nasty criminal type individual that was going to attack at any moment. Not the person that they got that willfully abided by all commands.
Let me ask you, if that is the issue, why the hell are they doing this at a pre-K elementary school with kids?
Exactly. Less likelihood of me doing something because of the kids being present, I'm assuming. I have no idea.
That's bullshit. America, we have a serious problem going on with law enforcement. It needs to be addressed. This is the type of stupidity happening day in and day out throughout our country. I have been on the front lines of this with the veterans, and I can tell you from real issues being criminalized, we're criminalizing their sicknesses, okay? We're criminalizing their behavior, and we're locking them up for stuff that we're responsible for.
They're criminalizing our combat experience.
Thank God. Yeah, don't even get me started. It's insane. So listen, then you're arrested. What happens?
So then I'm arrested, and I get the wonderful pleasure of spending about 20 days in Orange County's maximum security holding facility.
So why 20 days? They have, they have what, 30 days to pick you up on this warrant, correct?
You know, realistically, I wish we could have gotten to the 30-day mark so we would have more definitive information on that. It was sworn to me that they had 30 days, but I had also heard that there was contingencies where it could be more or less. People brought up business day terms. Bottom line was for me is that the guards told me that on that 20th day, after I had some lawyers come and meet me in Orange County and tell me they were going to work on getting me released, about 4 days after that, guard comes up and says, "Hey, you're being released." So at this point, mentally, I've just gone from the fact that I am incarcerated to now I am getting out. I go down to a hallway. They give me my clothes. I get dressed. I'm in a holding cell. All right. They're going to let me call my wife. I'm going to go get picked up. This is going to be wonderful. I'll see my kids. Guard comes up and I say, "Where am I going? Where do I go to get released?" And she's like, "Right there to them." And there's this private organization transport company standing there with shackles. And they proceed to shackle my feet and then handcuff my hands and then shackle them to my waist. So I literally look like, you know, a murder suspect walking in out of Orange County, and now I'm being asked to get into the back of a Ford Econoline van. When I look inside of the van, I find 5 individuals sitting in the back of it. 3 are on one bench seat, and there's 2 on another bench seat. So I can only assume that other spot's for me.
Now, are these fellow prisoners?
Are. And lo and behold, 3 of the 6 people in the back of that van were veterans.
Yeah, your prisons are full of veterans, America. Be proud. Go ahead.
So I get into the back of this van, and I'm told that we are going to drive from Orange County to wherever they've got to go in between. And then whenever they get there, they're going to drop me off in Lawton.
You're driving to Oklahoma.
Yes, in the back of a 40 Econoline van. Now, realistically, total, because we had 2 females in the van at the time as well. So they got a bench seat facing the front of the vehicle. So if I can paint this picture, if you've got the body of a 40 Econoline vehicle, you have the passenger and the driver. The next compartment back is a bench seat for 3 people to sit in an upright position and drive down the road. And then directly behind them, you now have 2 bench seats that are facing each other. So I'm sitting next to 2 individuals, and we are literally facing knee to knee, 3 individuals across from us. So you're in the back of this van as tight as they can possibly fit you, and you're shackled up from head to toe. And they tell you, you know, if you do anything, you get loud, rowdy, whatever, they'll classify it as an escape attempt and add 20 years to your sentence.
And this is private contractors threatening you, correct?
Out of Texas. Private contractors out of Texas. Some Hispanic dude driving this little old white lady that had talked to me in the beginning. She was the one that actually shackled me up and took me off, loaded me up in the van. And we start driving across the country. And we're picking up people and dropping people off en route. If you need to use the restroom, you got to let them know about an hour in advance. So you better know that you got to go in an hour. And because what that does is gives them the ability to pull into a county facility somewhere and utilize their facility. Because you can't just stop at a rest stop on the side of the road and unload a bunch of people in shackles. So as we're driving along, night before they dropped me off, and I wish I could tell you specific dates at this point, but it's been a while now.
It's irrelevant.
But we're in Texas, and we're at a gas station, and I don't know, they've the guards got us water and I don't know, like Hostess cakes for dinner or something like that. That was the meal they were feeding us for that night. And
do you get fed based on your side? Did you get more Hostess cakes than the girl who's 105 pounds?
No, God, no, man. You get 2 Hostess cakes and a bottle of water, and they're like, rock out.
Got it. Okay.
So we're sitting there, and the Navy cat, this veteran Navy cat that was in the back of the van, I don't know his name, but he did not like the guard. I don't know. Maybe it was just, I don't know what the sense they were. There was just something that wasn't clashing. And he just kept loving to get under this guard's skin. Kept telling him over and over, you know, all these just terrible comments, you know, saying some derogatory terms in regards to him being homosexual and different things like that. And the guard finally had enough of it and brake checks us in the parking lot of this gas station in Texas. In the process, from where I was sitting, I got thrown from the end of the bench seat into they got cages dividing you. So I got thrown into the cage, tweaked my neck up pretty good, and immediately demanded to go to medical. Go ahead.
So what we're talking about, just to be a brake check. So we have one of the guys being transported is harassing the driver who, you know, listen, I remember, when I was in Panama and we were doing civil disturbances, I mean, guys that spit on you, they do all that, and you were told that's your job. So let's just make sure this is a private contractor driving prisoners, and these prisoners are shackled. And because he's upset about comments he's making, he does what's called a brake check. And I'd never heard of a brake check because I'd never really, other than, you know, spend 6 hours in prison, never did much more than that based on, you know, the arrest I had with marijuana. The question I have is, what the fuck is a brake check, and what is that? Explain what that is.
Okay, so figuratively, if you were driving your car and you wanted to verify that your brakes were working properly, you could essentially stand on them about as hard as you possibly could and lock up the vehicle. This would cause a forward momentum effect of anything that was not strapped down to violently fly forward in your vehicle. And I mean, you can do this at home. Put a box of Kleenex in your back window and slam on the brakes. It's going to come forward at Mock Jesus.
Yeah. Do you guys have seatbelts on?
God, no.
Got it. So this is done as a retaliation against this one inmate. It hits all of you, and there were some injuries, correct?
Absolutely.
And this is widely accepted within the law enforcement community as a means to basically just be a dick to inmates.
That I don't see it accomplishing any other purpose than to hurt someone.
Got it.
Literally, when you think about the fact that you are doing this to someone who can't protect themselves, you're putting somebody into a situation where they can't protect themselves and can potentially be hurt, and you're doing it knowingly. That's just malicious. That's a hate act.
Welcome to our jails and prisons in America. So this is great. So you're in the hospital for a while, but you get out. You're okay, correct?
Now we're in the hospital for a matter of maybe a half an hour. It's enough time for them to say they ran us through some scans and send us out the door. Because as soon as we got in there, I start screaming to the medical staff that I need to use a phone because of the incident and why we're there. And they don't deny me that.
You're in Texas.
Yes, we're in Texas. Not only did they deny me the ability to call someone, they deny me the ability to have my medical record when I leave.
Well, listen, let me tell you something. The only thing they hate worse than black people in Texas is prisoners. Let's be real. Okay, so you issue. They're not really helpful. As you said, they did what they had to under the letter of the law, which is get you medical service. Although it really wasn't. It was, we took him. They said he was okay. Now get him to prison, basically in Oklahoma. Correct?
Yep, absolutely. Well, because what happened at that point is, with me being essentially a documented disabled veteran and them doing this, their fear was that I was going to get hurt more in that vehicle. So they literally diverted their travels out of Texas and drove me to my destination in Oklahoma completely off path, just to get me out of the van in particular. Once they got me out of the van on the transfer, whatever they told Oklahoma at Comanche County caused Comanche County to put me in a cell by myself for 3 days.
Okay. And this is where I start to learn about this. This is when I start to learn about you. We were trying to raise some money. We raised some decent money, pay for you to get out bail money. I know we had a couple people come out and get you. This is when Sarah Swain came on board, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so everything at this time, you're facing life in prison over 5 immature plants. And what happens right now? You basically get out right after how many days?
So roughly about a month. now. So I did the first 10 days, and then now I've done a month between Orange County and Comanche County. And in the process of me being released, so see, I met Sarah Swain when I was in Orange County. And she said that she was going to do everything that she could, and she said she was going to take my case pro bono.
Okay.
So she gets to Oklahoma the day that I'm released. And shortly thereafter that, a statement is made, a press release is dropped saying the charges against me had been dropped. At the same time, Sarah Swain told me that she had been given guidance by someone within the courts, not very specific of who, whether it was the DA's office, the judge's office, whoever, but that they wanted me to stop all media attention at that point in time.
Because we had really, at this point in time, while you're being arrested, we had we had pushed out this really hard about this, and it did get under their skin. I mean, I was told directly by some people that they were pissed off. And so they're unhappy about this, but what are your options? Because there was talk about Veterans Court. There was talk about a lot of things. What were your options, and how did you end up doing your blind plea? Because that's what you end up doing, is you do a blind plea because they tell you basically, I'm not going to agree to anything, but if you agree to 4 years or 5 years potentially in jail, throw yourself on the judge, there's a good chance you'll get probation, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Why did you do Veterans Court? Because that's what everyone thought you were going to do. Veterans Court, let's talk about that, because when I first heard it, was like, okay, he's going to do Veterans Court. They're going to make this thing go away. No one wants to put this guy in jail. But obviously, it's Oklahoma. It was illegal. But this is the way out. What happened, and why not Veterans Court?
Okay, so there was never really a definitive answer on Veterans Court as to why they were offering up what they were offering. But what I was told was essentially that if I gave up on Veterans Court, stopped it as an option, it would be better in sentencing. Now, for the Veterans Court, why I think that was possible is because if Veterans Court was to be approved, it would have been a nightmare. Comanche County does not have Veterans Court. The nearest county that has that falls under Tulsa. So they would have had to transfer my case from Comanche to Tulsa. And then if they were going to, at that point, honor the fact that they had already established residency in California, they would then have to transfer it from that VA to California. Now, if at any point in time someone dropped the ball, lost track of me, didn't maintain, and I ended up slipping through the cracks, that was definitely not going to be acceptable for Oklahoma. So I'm thinking this was an element that, hey, they were going to be able to keep it all in house. They were going to get the kudos for the felony. They were going to get the conviction and the monies from fees and anything associated with it. Not to mention my blood and my first, second, and third born child. So.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes sense. So you decide to go, they let you out. We all think this is done.
Yep.
Okay. You're going to throw yourself on the court. We're all getting hints that basically, and what happened? Because they basically said either accept this. If you don't accept this, I'm going to throw on a couple charges to make life a real possibility. Correct?
Yes. So realistically, what happened was that about March of this year, went into a debate on how we were going to attack the fight. Now, my pro bono lawyer at that point had requested $20,000 to continue the fight and take it to trial. She did not know, or I don't know what her holdup was as to wanting to take it to trial, other than the fact that maybe she just knew that I could not come up with $20,000 to pay her, so she had never really planned on doing it anyways. So essentially, in order to even have legal representation at my blind plea and not have my lawyer walk away from me, I was going to have to then accept this blind plea.
In the blind plea, so people understand, basically the DA comes in to you and says, I'm asking for 5 years, correct?
Yes.
Or is it 4? Yeah, I'm asking for 5 years. The judge can give you anything from probation to 5 years or more. And the argument that I heard was the following, that the judge has already hinted, because you have another lawyer who's friends with the judge in Oklahoma. I guess that's how you do it in Oklahoma. and that everyone thought there's a very good chance you'll get probation. You just need to be a good little boy.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what happens in these blind pleas is you don't know. And you go in there, you could have been sentenced to 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. And as a person who has a brand new family, you're enrolled in school, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you call me, and we're talking a lot at this point in time. Yep. And you had I'd say episodes where the stress, and I've been through this, brother, so I get it. And this is absolutely real. Your fear is you're going to get their sentence for 5 years. On the other side, it was Oklahoma, and then you got your sentencing extended beyond June. That was supposed to be at, because in July, Oklahoma was changing its sentencing drug laws to be more lenient. They're not lenient. They went from, Siberia to China, and they call that more lenient. And they have a major overcrowding situation in Oklahoma. And the problem is a lot of that's those private prisons that they require to fill under contract. And you were rightfully so. So you call me basically saying you want to fight this thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're at where we are today. Who's taken over your case?
Okay. Why I wanted to fight. So what happened was this pre-sentencing investigation was done to determine me as a person and as a character. And in the process of it being done, I was told that it was denied. I wasn't really sure exactly what that meant. And I'm actually really, really happy now that I decided to fight this, because I've now seen the pre-sentencing investigation as of last night. The picture that they have painted of me as an individual, I am not a veteran. I have no time served in the military. I have never deployed. All I am is a criminal who admitted to using cannabis every day. And because of that, they say I'm a danger. And that the only way I will be rehabilitated is if I serve some sort of incarceration and then supervised probation. That was the recommendation from the Department of Justice to the judge. So realistically, if I didn't fight this, and with the representation that I had, who in their right mind, okay, big deal, he's a veteran. But with that picture being painted, there wasn't anything in there saying, this was the type of individual he was. This is the different things about him. When they referred to me and talking about me directly.
About that. I know something about pre-sentencing investigations. I was the opposite side. They said I was the greatest thing ever. So I had a positive pre-sentencing investigation. But listen, I had a little bit of money. What I've learned about these pre-sentencing investigations is they're done by some person who isn't anything other than a bureaucrat. And their whole job is to paint you as the most negative person in the world. I've been told this, the most negative person in the world, to justify throwing your ass in jail. And that is standard.
Let's put it this way. When I talked to the guy in the initial interview between he and I, he told me that I lost points because I didn't have a job. I'm maintaining 18 credits in school, but because I don't have a job, I rate a lower score on his test.
Not admitting to the system, you're not doing what you're told, and fuck them. That's my comment there. So you now have who? Who is your attorney now?
So as of right now, my attorney fighting the criminal side is Tom Hurley. He actually just jumped on as of yesterday. He's putting in some motions as of this week, trying to get the sentencing continued. If the courts approve that, the next thing that he's going to be requesting is that my plea be reverted and that we will then push forward with a trial. The saving grace that we have at this point that we didn't have before is that on top of the trial, when we ran into the situation with Sarah Swain, is that they said that they were going to offer in 2 additional charges. They were going to say because Whitney was in possession of a food scale in our kitchen, that meant that I had intent to distribute, and that because I had the firearm, that I was going to be possession of a firearm while committing a felony, and that was 10 years minimum. Well, the statute of limitations was 2 years as of June of this year, and that should null and void them being able to add in those additional charges, which is why they were pushing so hard to get me into the courtroom and to get that plea acknowledged before June 1.
Okay. So remember, just as a reminder to the audience, Kris Lewandowski is a combat veteran 2 tours, one in Iraq and Afghanistan. His cannabis use stems from his bad experience with pharmaceuticals, and he was caught with 5 immature plants in his house. From welcome to America. So, Kris, where are we today? How are you? Your outlook on this?
Honestly, it varies from day to day. You know, you talk to somebody one day and you're like, wow, you know, the reality that I'm still potentially facing time at the end of this. But in this process, what it really did for me is it's opened my eyes to the bigger picture that was out there and understanding how big this fight really is. You had brought up veterans court, and we never really got into why that wasn't an option. But
why wasn't that? Go here. Let's talk about that. Why wasn't that an option?
So what and why, and you know, and potentially why we want to, you know, possibly use it as an option now is, in my opinion, telling someone that is using cannabis that they have to stop using cannabis and go back onto prescription pills is literally sentencing someone to death in some cases. And I realistically fear that for myself in this case. So veterans court, what that process is essentially the VA steps in and says, no, this is a veteran. We're not going to let them be tarnished because of a criminal, some type of a criminal activity. And they have checks and balances on what falls into the realm that they will essentially rehabilitate in-house. My case falls into what they would rehabilitate, and essentially it would be an 18 months to 3-year process, in which part of which I would be inpatient at the VA, and then the other part I would be outpatient. But at any point in time that I was found to be on cannabis, I would be immediately remanded back to the state and be forced to execute my sentence.
So you make one mistake, like smoke cannabis, over the multi-year process, you are remanded back to the state to serve regular terms, and veteran courts becomes a non-option, correct?
Yes, and it's a zero tolerance policy. And so for me, it's not even an accident. I wouldn't mistakenly smoke cannabis. I would actively continue doing it, and I would be screwed right from the get-go. Because, you know, in this process, you know, as hard and as crazy as it was and going through the roller coaster of the pharmaceuticals, for me, you know, it was very scary, the idea of being on cannabis alone, and if that was actually going to mediate my symptoms. And it took a long time to have enough faith in the plant to trust it with essentially my safety, my personal well-being, and my happiness. And for me, it's worked out. Do I know that that's the case for everyone? No. And do I think that it's completely okay?
So you have to fight this.
Yes. But
and you
for
become
me,
a warrior to fight this.
Exactly. And for me personally, because of that fact that I know that I will use this, I have to fight it. So what that essentially stems to at this point is, which way do I take this fight? Does my team take this fight? Do we as a group go at this? Is it something that we need to be banging on the VA's door to say, look, this needs to be an option for me? Why am I being segregated because I choose something different than the pills you give me? You know?
Yeah. Well, listen, it does definitely limit your options in this case. And I will say, I'm a big fan. I mean, when we talked about all this ability, I was like, you sure you want to do this? You sure you want to do this? I was kind of falling on the side of do it.
Let's just be quiet and get it over with so that I don't end up with time and then it's over and done with.
And the big issue is your family, right? Because this
Absolutely.
is what you're dealing with now. You pissed off Oklahoma. There's a chance you spend a lot of time in jail over 5 immature damn plants. And because I trust the Oklahoma judicial system less than I trust any banana republic I lived in Central America in the military. I'm being straight up with you.
Absolutely.
And so the question becomes, you know, right now, let's talk about it. Reason why is you're doing wonderful. You're in California. You have a wonderful family. Whitney loves you more than everything. She's with you. I don't know why our spouses still love us after all this, but they do. And you're going to school. You have a 3.0 at Saddleback. You're doing what you're supposed to do, and you've now decided to fight this in the only way. You're a fighter. Fight. You don't know any other way.
Yeah, well, and you can't back down. And see, a couple of things happened. I was very misinformed in the regard as to what it meant to plea this out and to essentially accept everything. Because what it does literally is it changed my label from veteran to felon.
Oh, I'm there.
And in that process of that happening, what I came to find out from doing a lot of research and talking to attorneys was it wasn't ever going to go away. It wasn't something where, oh, you know, it's an easy process in California. You know, you do the right thing, you can clear your stuff up and you can carry on with life. So Oklahoma, essentially, I have three options at this point. I have fight it and win it. I have fight it and get it deferred, and I have fight it and get it suspended. So what those three mean is if I fight it and I get it suspended, that means they'll suspend the incarceration, but I will never be able to lose the felony. It will be with me forever. Yeah. That is realistically the most likely course of action that has been assumed at this point if I would have walked into the courtroom last month for sentencing, is that I would have received a suspended sentence and been a felon forever. That's all assumed. Again, nothing was set in stone. It was just that's been talk on our end. Now, deferred sound really nice. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. Well, Oklahoma's got a really, really funny deferred system. Their deferred system says that if, say, you did receive a 5-year deferred sentence, and during that time you receive supervised probation, all fine and good, you do your fine, you do your 5 years, it's done. That felony sits with you for an additional 10 years. From the time your deferment's over, you still have an additional 10 years. That puts me at almost 50 years old by the time the felony's cleared up. So realistically trying to reestablish myself now as a civilian. Now you talk about Xing off all of this and then thinking about just that struggle of integrating yourself as a human being, as a veteran back into society, and working on that and trying to go to school and establish yourself and establish a good name for yourself. I mean, you're knocked down before you even get in the door.
Yes.
How do you get a respectable position? Nobody wants to put their name behind a felon.
Oh, I can tell you, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I will tell you, thank God I'm running the Weed for Warriors because you guys don't care that I'm a felon for cannabis. And so, you know, you're going to fight this thing. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. You know, I think we hit on a couple issues I think we need to talk in the future. One thing is the domestic violence side. The vast majority of domestic violence cases that I'm seeing in the courtrooms throughout this country with veterans is just like Kris's. There's absolutely no physical violence between the two individuals, and it's women against men as much as men against women.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's an issue. But the problem is, this is the problem. Violence is a real issue, a real serious issue, especially for veterans of PTSD. And these spouses love these, and they're putting up with a lot of this stuff. And yet the real problems, the real domestic violence, they're not calling the police because they know how it turns out.
And that's the sad part. You know, realistically, if there was an element of law enforcement, or when you have a situation, why is it protocol on a mental health call to send law enforcement? Why can't it be someone from, you know, fire department? Why can't you have both show up? Maybe have somebody who's got more of a thought process of saving a life instead of taking one to maybe balance out the situation. You know, we have checks and balances within the judicial system, supposedly, and within the within our democracy. So why is it that we can't establish, you know, wasn't that a partnership back in the day in law enforcement? I mean, you always saw that on the witty cop shows. You know, the two guys were so completely different. It wasn't because they were making a play on it. It was simply because you wanted two completely different minds looking at a situation, so you didn't have somebody ended up dead or incarcerated that didn't need to be.
Well, listen, the fact is it's all about money. Yep. You don't have the money, so therefore you don't have this. And the police, I'm going to be straight up with you, don't give a fuck. And they don't care because they're not trained to care. And as you said, it would be too much money. Ronald Reagan, thank God in the 80s, almost decimated the federal budget for mental health. You see this all over America. Mental health, we're asking our police to basically take care of mental health, first responder mental health, and that's a disaster. And it's a disaster on so many levels. And out of fairness to the police, they're being asked to do something they shouldn't be. So when we look at the police, we need to be looking at their bosses, and that's the politicians. And so bottom line is you're absolutely correct. And the problem is we're not getting the help to the spouses that we need to get, both to preserve safety and also preserve the family. Because the reality is most of these spouses, because even in nonviolent, okay, there's nothing on this husband, there's nothing on this wife, neither of them want to press charges, we're still taking them one in because there's a zero tolerance. Mm-hmm. Once you get in the system, even in a misdemeanor, they're not dropping it. They're basically saying you have to fight this thing to let it go, or you have to agree to anger management and all these other issues. So poor people end up agreeing and getting in the system. Now they have one strike against them. Rich people fight it. So what we have in America is if you have money, you have access to your constitutional rights. If you don't have money, you're screwed. And what we see this in court after court after court, your story is not unique, Kris. It is this, where they go, okay, if you want to fight this, we're going to slap some charges on and you're facing life in prison. If you don't fight it, you're looking at 5 years from me, but the judge is saying they'll probably defer it. I'll give you an example. In my court case, I was looking at 4 years in jail, and the judge simply said to the DA, I'm not sending this guy to jail. And that was the key for me to just play nice and accept the plea and go away. That's what they do. They set up this binary system by which if you fight it, they screw you. If you don't fight, they make you go away and treat you okay. But the problem is, and you got one strike against you, and you've got a lot of the issues you talked about. Well, you have a felony against you. You can't get a job. And again, remember, what's this over? It's cannabis. You're not a violent person. You've never had a previous record. And yet the money you spent, the toll on the family, the toll on your kids, it isn't what society should want because it's not beneficial to society. This is beneficial to the judicial complex, which keeps lawyers overpaid, judges overpaid, and a correctional system that has become a jobs program for our unions, for the federal union program. And that's what's disgusting about this whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I was going to say, realistically, as going through the academy back in 2003, the realistic thing is that the person that I was in a relationship with at the time went through cosmetology school in Colorado, and her program was 13 months. Mine was 3. And I got a gun.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, you look at Norway where they don't kill people.
Yep.
And their training is much longer. I mean, the reality is this. It's all about the almighty dollar here. You and I don't have a voice. Most Americans don't have a voice. Wealthy people have a voice. If you're in that top 1/10 of 1% have a voice. Unions have a voice. Federal unions have a voice. Look at the VA. You don't get fired even when you kill vets, basically there. So the reality is this, brother. I admire you a tremendous amount for fighting this thing. And it's a tough decision. We're going to be behind you the whole way. And I'll tell you, if it means we got to get out there and protest in Oklahoma and do a lot of things, we're willing to do that. We're going to be working with you. But bottom line is this, brother. We love you. America, you're fucking up in so many ways. And we're going to fight to change that. Come join us to change that. Our judicial system is a disaster. And the reality behind it, the people who can change it won't change it. Because they're getting paid. They're getting paid as lawyers. They're getting paid as judges, which means they're politicians. The police are getting paid. The private contractors driving you from Orange County to Oklahoma are getting paid. It is literally a for-profit system that has created an incentive to jail everybody possible. And then, I got to pay 13 people myself. $30 every time I go see the probation officers. I got to pay for my court fees. It's like $6,000. Now, people will say, well, you got arrested. But remember, this is over cannabis. Yeah. You're arresting people over cannabis. You're arresting PTSD veterans over cannabis. Their choice to medicate. This isn't a question of better. Yeah. And trust me, you want these veterans on cannabis, especially combat veterans. So in reality is we're not accepting your rule of law. Your rule of law, slavery was legal or illegal. Your rule of law allows us to intern Japanese. Your rule of law can go fuck themselves. I don't care. And the reality is we're sick of this and we're going to stand up for what's right. And so, brother, I admire what you're doing. And I really appreciate you coming on. Let's follow up with this, but we're going to cut it off here. Do you have any last words you want to say?
I just want to do a thank you. I want to thank you personally for being there every step of the way, and to the Weed for Warriors Project. I mean, bottom line, the Weed for Warriors Project has been there for me every single step of the way. Anybody that has backed out or walked away, you guys have always been there. So bottom line, I have to give you so much love and appreciation and anything you guys need. And as we push this fight and take it further, I'm in it for the long haul. Y'all need anything, you can just let me know.
Okay, and listen, we're fighting for all the other veterans out there. I know there's been a lot of veterans going, that's me. And that's exactly what's going on in this country, America. And you're too much of a jerk off to really address the situation. And we have too many scared Americans in this country who listen to the news and believe the world's going to end and all these people out in jail are evil. And that's absolutely not the case. So, Kris, thank you for being on.
Awesome. Appreciate it, gents.
Thank you again, Kris.
Bye, guys.
This concludes the podcast with Kris Lewandowski. We hope you really enjoyed this. This was one hell of a story, and he is not the only Marine that this is happening to. So stay tuned for more Weed for Warriors Project podcast.